former police officer convicted for exploiting power to commit sexual crimes. Law enforcement officers are entrusted with the responsibility to protect and serve their communities. They wear the badge as a symbol of authority, responsibility, and trust, a commitment to uphold justice and safeguard those in need. But what happens when that badge becomes a shield for abuse, manipulation, and unspeakable acts of violence? This chilling case of DeShawn Torrence, a former Sanger, California police officer, exposes the dark reality of authority grossly misused. Convicted on 8 counts of deprivation of constitutional rights under color of law, including charges of kidnapping, aggravated sexual abuse, and attempted assault, Torrance's crimes serve as a grim reminder of what happens when power corrupts. In this video, we'll walk you through one of the most egregious abuses of authority ever committed by a law enforcement officer, and why this case matters to us all. For true crime enthusiasts, it offers not just a harrowing glimpse into the life of a predator in uniform, but a call to action for better protections and systemic accountability. DeShawn Torrence was a 42-year-old officer with the Sanger Police Department in California. As a public servant, his role was to uphold the law, protect the community, and respond to calls that required safety and justice. He was someone the citizens of Sanger were instructed to trust. Instead, Torrence used his police powers for predatory purposes, betraying those he was sworn to protect. His status as an officer enabled him to hide his crimes for far too long, exploiting the power dynamics between himself and his victims. The crimes committed by Torrence are deeply disturbing. Convicted of 8 federal charges, his offenses included kidnapping, aggravated sexual abuse, and attempted assault. These were not random acts of impulsive violence. They were actions meticulously carried out during the performance of his official duties. Torrence utilized his position as a uniformed officer to isolate and victimize 4 women. This pattern of behavior reveals both the methodical nature of his crimes and the horrifying extent to which he misused his authority. The charges stem from depriving these women of their constitutional rights, specifically their right to be free from unreasonable seizure and from cruel and inhumane treatment under the law. Tragically, Torrence twisted his legal powers into a weapon to coerce and harm, perpetuating fear and silence among his victims. Torrance's victims were women who found themselves at their most vulnerable moments, encountering a man they believed was there to uphold justice. Instead, he abused their trust. Each victim faced not only physical harm, but the lasting psychological impact of being betrayed by someone who should have been their protector. These women are survivors who have demonstrated incredible courage, not only in coming forward, but also in enduring what was a long and emotional legal process. Their bravery played a critical role in ensuring Torrence was held accountable. However, it's crucial to remember that for these victims, the path to healing is a long and complex journey, marked by trauma inflicted by someone cloaked in impunity. At the core of this case stands one inescapable reality. Torrence used his badge as both a tool and a shield. He preyed on individuals who were least likely to defend themselves, manipulating the inherent power imbalance between a police officer and an ordinary citizen. His uniform allowed him to gain his victims' trust and obedience under the guise of performing lawful duties. Torrance's actions were not only unlawful, they were a complete betrayal of what the badge represents. This abuse exemplifies why unchecked authority is so dangerous. When individuals in positions of power manipulate their roles for personal gain, they undermine the very institutions they represent and the communities they serve. The trial unveiled a clear and horrifying pattern of behavior. Torrence sought out women who were isolated and vulnerable, ensuring they had little or no recourse against his advances. The calculated manner in which he selected his victims demonstrated a predator's mindset, one intent on exploiting those least capable of resisting. Even more troubling, Torrence likely believed he could get away with it because of his position. This pattern of deliberate and targeted exploitation underscores a systemic failure to prevent such abuses from occurring within law enforcement ranks. The emotional and psychological scars borne by these survivors cannot be overstated. Their trauma stems not only from the direct assaults, but also from the violation of trust placed in someone who was meant to protect them. For these women, the uniform that Torrence wore will forever be associated with fear and betrayal. Such incidents often leave victims grappling with feelings of shame, isolation, and mistrust, making it even more difficult for them to come forward. Torrance's actions did not just harm them, they also compromised their sense of safety and faith in the justice system. The federal trial in Fresno, California was a critical moment in holding Torrence accountable. After weighing the evidence and hearing from survivors, the jury convicted him on 8 federal counts. These charges, anchored in deprivation of constitutional rights under the color of law, carry severe penalties and send a strong message about the judicial system's stance against the abuse of authority. Federal involvement was particularly important in this case, as it ensured that the allegations were investigated and prosecuted with the seriousness they deserved. The conviction represents not only justice for the survivors, but also a broader call for accountability within law enforcement institutions. A police badge is more than a piece of metal. It is a symbol of protection, trust, and the rule of law. Torrance's actions defiled this symbol, reducing it from one of honor to one of fear and betrayal. For many in Sanger and beyond, this case will forever serve as a chilling reminder of how power can corrupt. The badge should empower officers to serve their communities, uphold justice, and offer safety to the vulnerable. Torrance's betrayal of that trust has lasting consequences, both for individual victims and for the integrity of the institution he represented. Torrance's crimes have left an indelible stain on the trust between law enforcement and the Sanger community. For many, the actions of one officer call into question the broader culture and accountability measures within the police department. How was it possible for Torrence to commit these crimes undetected for so long? This case highlights the urgent need for systemic safeguards to prevent similar abuses. Transparent oversight mechanisms, better screening and training processes, and a culture of zero tolerance for misconduct are vital steps toward restoring public trust. Torrance's case is not an isolated incident. Across the United States and globally, cases of police misconduct involving sexual assault, excessive force, and other violations have continued to surface. Each of these incidents damages public perception of law enforcement and erodes communities' willingness to trust those who are tasked with their protection. This broader pattern underscores the need for vigilance and change, ensuring that those who misuse their power are held accountable and that institutions dedicated to justice are above reproach. In the aftermath of such crimes, it's critical to focus on supporting survivors. Providing resources such as counseling services, legal aid, and community support networks can make all the difference for victims navigating the long road to recovery. Survivors often deal with the dual burden of healing from their trauma while confronting a justice system that can sometimes seem indifferent or hostile to their plight. By amplifying survivor voices and stories, we can begin to foster a culture that prioritizes victim support and ensures they are heard, believed, and empowered. Torrance's conviction is a necessary, though hard-won, step in the pursuit of accountability. It demonstrates that no one, not even law enforcement, is above the law. True change, however, requires more than one successful prosecution. It demands a systemic commitment to transparency, training, and oversight to prevent abuses from occurring in the first place. Public awareness and advocacy play a crucial role in driving such reforms. By shining a light on cases like this one, we can begin to dismantle the systems that allow predators to operate with impunity under the guise of authority. The case of DeShawn Torrence is a harrowing testament to the dangers of unchecked power. As a former police officer, he betrayed not only the victims of his crimes, but also the community and profession he was sworn to serve. His conviction represents a small measure of justice for the survivors, but it also raises broader questions about accountability, oversight, and the need for systemic reform. For true crime audiences, this is more than a story of one man's depravity. It's a call to action. By advocating for transparency, supporting victims, and insisting on the ethical standards we expect from those in power, we can work to ensure that justice prevails and no one else falls prey to such horrifying abuses.